All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today's call. During today's webinar, we're going to discuss how Ekco and Samsara have been successfully integrating AI into their tech stack to slash their response times and improve overall efficiency. My name's Hannah. I'll be your host for this webinar. I've been a product marketing manager here at Times for actually 6 months today, which is a little exciting for me. But I'll hand it off to our other speaker, Kieran, to introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Kieran. I'm a SOC engineer at Ekco. I've been with the company for 1.5 years, and I basically do all things SOC related, so managed endpoint and SIEM.
Awesome. Thank you. And we also have Hella with us here today.
Hi, everyone. My name's Hella Lucas. I'm a security operations engineer at Samsara. Samsara makes IoT devices for logistics systems. I am on the security team for the company. I've been using Tines since I was an intern at a different company, Coinbase, in 2020. And I've been at Samsara for about 6 months now.
Awesome. Thank you. So yeah, it's great to have you both here with us today. Just to quickly go through an agenda of what we're going to be covering in this webinar. The goal of this webinar is really for us to just have a conversation about AI in the security landscape, how each of our two speakers are adopting AI, and how they've been able to use it efficiently across their SOC teams. And then we'll even look a little forward to the future. But if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. And we've saved some time at the end to address those. So let's dive in to how AI is reshaping security operations. So for the AI optimists, there's huge potentials and opportunities to unlock efficiency, reduce manual work, and streamline SecOps. So we'll start with Kieran. How are your teams approaching these opportunities?
Yeah, so I mean, myself included, I'm a daily AI user. I use it for incident management to answer questions like, what have I not considered? What steps should I take? Does this look malicious? Really, really simple stuff. In engineering, I can make my weak areas a little more accessible. For example, what is wrong with my query? Then I can learn from the response that AI gives me and go, okay, what does that new command do? How can I make my queries better for my own memory in the future? And I also do this for things like regular expressions, so regex, which is something I've not really learned. But writing from scratch is a little bit hard, but I sort of get the gist of doing it if I can see an expression already laid out for me, and that's what AI lets me do. And then finally, efficiency. So AI is helping us at Ekco gain efficiency by enabling us to eliminate the tedious, repetitive tasks. So, for example, anything that contains any form of text, for example, we just get AI to write it, and then we'll just edit it afterwards just to make sure that it's all good. And then also anything that's high development, low output, we can use AI to essentially speed that process up. So speed the development process up, so that way we're not wasting too much time.
Yep. And Hella, what about on your side?
Yeah, similarly to Kieran, I think getting an AI to write regex and help me debug why my queries aren't working is definitely something that I do on a daily basis as well. In general, being able to use AI for security analysis and helping determine whether something is malicious or not is a huge advantage. It can really help by providing additional context and explanations in a more human-friendly way. I think for me personally, as I've been moving from a more Windows and Active Directory based kind of environment that I need to protect to a more cloud-based one, it's been really, really useful for giving me additional insights into how various things work, especially from a security perspective. The assistance in this regard, of course, isn't limited to security. It's useful across all kinds of operational work. And then another way that my team or I am trying to use AI in my team is I'm trying to get it to classify all types of requests that we receive into our team into various categories. So as a security team, we have various types of inputs that don't always follow the same format, don't always come from the same sources, but ultimately ask for very similar things. And my vision is that AI can help us identify categories of those requests and then efficiently allow us to trigger automated responses to them. And again, this is what I'm using for security, but this is something that can be used across all types of operational teams that kind of need to deal with internal customers.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you both for that. It sounds like you guys are really taking the time to think about what you can do with AI, but there's also plenty of AI skepticisms out there. We all know the value of AI depends on your ability to trust it. And so when teams are starting to explore how they can integrate AI into their own processes, what are some of the potential limitations you guys have assessed? And Hala, we can start with you on this one.
Sure. Well, at Samsara, based not only on kind of how I want to do things, but also on our policies around using AI, we use it to enable, not replace, human analysis. And there's a few reasons for this. I think the two big ones that stand out to me are, firstly, that when things go wrong, it's a bit of a black box, which is particularly concerning in security where high impact decisions are made. So determining if something is a threat or not is sometimes quite a binary decision, and an AI can assist with that. But if it makes a mistake, it's very difficult sometimes to understand why it's made that mistake. It can be really difficult to kind of pinpoint its reasoning, versus with a human where you can just ask, why did you think that or the other, and then address that with some kind of training or knowledge, etc. And then the other thing that is worrying is hallucinations. So AI can generate convincing but incorrect results. So a very common example in security of this is hallucinating data when given an IP address. So you give the AI some kind of IP and it generates results that they look convincing. They look like any other kind of IP checker tool results, but they're literally just hallucinated. And proper training and education for the team or the consumers of that data is critical to mitigate this kind of risk and to make sure that the outputs of AI are used responsibly. Another example, I was trying to get an AI assistant to help me with understanding some EDR data or trying to determine how to use EDR data to figure something out. And the AI came up with completely falsified EDR events that I really wish existed, but don't.
Yep. Yeah, if only. And Kieran, what about you?
So like while AI is a great enabler, it's really important to recognize that it's not infallible. So there are all these risks, especially when relying on AI for critical tasks. So earlier I said I get my queries evaluated, and I could use these to write my detection rules in the SOC. I could copy and paste straight out of whatever AI model I want and deploy it into production. But fundamentally, if you don't understand what it is you're actually deploying, then chances are you shouldn't do this, and you should probably speak to a professional. Sort of looping back to what Hella just mentioned about hallucinations. Literally today, I was trying to find out how to toggle an advanced setting in Azure. I asked it tell me how to find this setting. And a set of instructions came, and I was like clicking through the menus, and I couldn't quite find it. So I kept reprompting it, going, are you sure it's in this? You know, because sometimes if you ask it if it's sure, it will come back and go, oh yeah, I was totally wrong. It's actually here. And I'm like, okay, thank you. Thanks for not telling me the first time. And yeah, essentially that button did not exist. So I ended up having to redo what I needed to do anyways. And then finally, another one is like one prompt might give different outputs every single time, which is entirely useless if you're trying to do business as usual work where you need that sort of repeatability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think what you guys hitting on the hallucinations part, you know, like AI isn't perfect, but it's still important to understand the risks that you can come across when securing AI, you know, anything from privacy to regulation to finding the right tools. So what would be your guys' thoughts on overcoming and understanding those risks?
I'll start. So I think, as mentioned before, one of the main ways to address the risk of AI being a bit of a black box and also being fallible is to educate users on how it works and how to interact with AI-generated data. And also, maybe I'll mention making sure that when you have an AI-generated output, it's clearly signposted to the people that are consuming it. Because that way they can evaluate whatever they're getting with that context. I think AI can also really struggle with edge cases where predictions might be less reliable. So making sure that you maintain human oversight in basically all scenarios is another way to mitigate risk. Kieran?
Yeah, definitely agree. I mean, trust is such a fundamental element with AI, and the transparency that you get with it is ultimately going to decide what you get out of it. You know, key questions that you should actually ask yourself, especially like in an engineering position such as ours, is where is your data going? How do you opt out of it being used elsewhere? For any of our lovely LinkedIn users on the webinar, chances are your data is going to a training model. If you Google how to opt out of this, you will find that you are already opted in. So that's an interesting one. Whether you were happy for that, you were never asked. And that's the slippery slope that we're currently on. And other things like Copilot says that your data is organizationally protected. But what data does that specifically mean? As we know, you've got actual data in terms of numbers, your customer information, but then what about metadata? Because usually that gets considered as something else or a bit on the side.
Yeah, privacy was definitely a significant concern for us as well. When it comes to AI learning from your data, for example, it was a big selling point for why we started using AI in Tynes when I was trying to get the tool approved for use internally. The fact that it doesn't use our data for training and that it keeps everything within our tenant was a big win in terms of privacy and compliance, and made it easier for me to justify the use of the tool internally.
Yeah, and for us, we sort of have a similar approach. So we use the models built into Tynes. Tynes is really flexible, lets us choose our own AI model. The alternative, though, is that if we're comfortable doing so, we can plug it into something else. So, for example, in Azure, we can use an LLM that we set up and that we train, and we can send our data there if we want. And Tynes allows us to do either or, which is great. So we just use a hybrid model, essentially. Overall, yeah, I think consideration of your data, be it AI, your own personal data, your like other organizational data that you interact with and try and use in any sort of form of like tool set, you should just think about where are you putting it, and that will ultimately help maintain a good security posture and look after your privacy.
Yeah. Thank you both. And I do want to call out, just from a times perspective, when we designed our features that go around AI, we were designing them specifically with security and privacy in mind, so that users like you can decide when and how your workflows are interacting with AI. But thank you for going through these. And then once, like, these teams have these risks in mind, they can feel more comfortable about moving forward with AI. So I'd love to learn more about the various ways your teams are utilizing AI to really, take your security operations to the next level. So Kieran, let's start with you on some of the biggest use cases Ekco's been discovering for AI adoption.
Yeah, so in Tines for us, like, again, what I mentioned before, high build time, low output stories are eliminated. Tedious build time can just be completely removed with the use of AI in Tines. For example, we can connect a tool set into Tines and ask AI to take the data that's being received, summarize it in a presentable format, and then throw it into a case that the analyst will work from. So, if someone gives us a new tool set, the time to onboard that and integrate that into the analyst's technology stack is 5 minutes, which is insane. And Time's already made things a lot quicker anyways, but it just shows how much more efficient you can get. Storyline analysis. So, for example, look at the case, look at all the enrichment for the indicators of attack that we've discovered, summarize what happened, and tell me if you think this is a malicious event or not. And then also tell me what I could do next. We can prompt all of those prompts and get a nice response that is used to guide the analyst. It's not the be all and end all, but it can do a bit of guiding. And to take that one step further, Tines has an automated event tool that will essentially write low-code Python for you. So, for example, I could get AI to output specific values, such as evil code number 1 means that it's malicious, or safe code number 2. So, for example, when I get the value that is the malicious value, which is highly confident, the AI is really confident, I could call this into an automation and use it to trigger a nice automated response. So, for example, malicious email discovered. Okay, we're like 90% confident with all the telemetry we've given that this is bad. Let's go and remove it, or just softly move it into people's junk folders. So, really simple things like that.
Yeah, I love this overall focus that you guys have at Ekco around empowering your analysts to reduce that tedious manual work that we often find ourselves tasked with, and instead of letting AI do that heavy lifting, so that you guys can then focus on your more higher impact projects. So Hella, would love to hear how the Samsara team is utilizing AI today.
Sure. So a few things to mention here. So one that I previously mentioned already, our team manages a security inbox where we receive a variety of requests. I'm currently developing a AI-based categorization system for this inbox. The challenge is that many requests are similar, but vary slightly in how they're presented, which means we have to kind of manually make things happen after receiving an email. Once we have confidence that our AI categorization is accurate, I want to let it autonomously trigger appropriate workflows or with minimal human interaction. Our inboxes also occasionally receive spam. We're addressing this with AI as well. So we have a system at the moment that alerts us so that we can quickly see important messages. And the AI spam filter prevents us from being notified about things like spam marketing emails, which has been a huge quality of life improvement, allowing us to focus on high risk information without distractions. At Samsara, our vulnerability management team is also utilizing AI specifically to generate descriptions of vulnerabilities. We have software that identifies vulnerabilities, and an AI will translate this technical information into kind of more human readable language. So this means when a system owner is notified about a vulnerability, they get a clear explanation of the issue and instructions on how to fix it, greatly simplifying the remediation process. And one last thing that I'll mention is that we are experimenting with AI-generated playbooks for our detections as well. So when our threat detection team develops a new detection, the AI suggests a playbook to accompany it, while a human still needs to review and ensure the accuracy by providing context around how our company functions. The AI offers valuable ideas for actionable steps and specific detections. And I don't know if it's like this in every team. I presume yes, but nobody really enjoys writing documentation. So AI-generated documentation that a human can refine is always a really good start for there to be docs at all.
Yeah. Thank you. And it sounds like both of you guys are leveraging AI in some really cool ways that's, like I said before, streamlining that manual work across your teams. You guys are able to work more efficiently, effectively, both inside and outside the SOC, perhaps. But Kieran, we can start with you. What are some of the biggest benefits you've seen since adopting AI?
I think you're muted, Kieran.
Thank you very much. So one of the biggest impacts has been like integrating AI with our sort of fresh desk workflow for ticketing. So we use times cases internally, but when a case needs to go to a client, we'll then escalate it. And the problem is that means you've got all these fields of data and all this information that you've now got to translate into customer-focused language and then submit it to a whole other platform. So by using AI, you can do a summary of this, and then essentially the analyst will then have the ability to edit the AI summary using timed pages. So we put the AI output into a page, they adjust the text, and then they just submit. And then what they can do is they send the ticket with a full summary ready for the client, which they've probably spent 2 minutes at most editing. And that just saves us so much time. I think we worked this out to be in and around 15 minutes per case, as you can see.
Nice. And Hala, what about you?
I think the most significant impact has actually been a fairly simple thing for us, which is our spam detection. I think it's drastically improved the quality of life for our on-call team. The getting paged for spam is a huge pain point because it's a false escalation and makes you look at your phone, when it's not maybe necessary. So I think it's been the biggest kind of quality of life improvement that AI has enabled for us, for sure. And I'll mention that a lot of our AI initiatives are still in their kind of early stages of adoption for them to have large impact. They're helpful in making our work easier, but we're not yet kind of confident in relying on them for critical decisions or kind of doing things on their own. So as we build more trust, refine the prompts, identify edge cases, we expect to integrate AI more and more in the future.
Awesome. Thank you. So that's an awesome segue. Future AI adoption. Where are you guys planning to focus your efforts next? And Kieran, on this one, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, our next focus is just going to be reporting. I mean, I think at least 4 times on this call, we've all moaned about writing and just the boringness of it. And what we want to try and do at Ekco is produce like concise data-driven reports that allow analysts to avoid writing essentially anything manually. We want to get them into a point of editing. So editing the text, creating useful graphics that customers can understand, charts, pie charts, whatever you want, something in any way, form or size, just anything but text, please. I think no one wants to see a wall of text when they're paying for a report. Again, the beauty of an analyst now is that we can allow them to actually focus on doing like trend analysis, so providing some meaningful input to that report rather than we just need to get it out the door. And the whole process of like baking in AI is just gonna generally just improve the efficiency of our report generation and also mean that the quality just gets better over time. And that's like absolute priority number one. So I think next year that's gonna really take off.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's a super important part. Like you said, I can't stand writing either. So anything that AI can just help get the ideas flowing at least is great. Hella, what about you?
Yeah, so I'll second what Kieran said. I think improved reporting capabilities is something that we want to utilize AI for more as well. But my overall vision for next year in AI in my team is to use the inbox categorization that I've mentioned a few times on this call already to help standardize various inputs and then trigger automation more reliably. So my goal is to have AI accurately interpret human inputs and then programmatically take action on them. And my objective is to make sure that we can make the AI reliable enough to trigger handling various tasks consistently, reducing the need for manual intervention and improving overall efficiency in our processes.
Awesome. Yeah, sounds pretty exciting. That's actually it for these slides. Thank you both so much for all of this great information. I do want to give some people time to pop any questions they have in the chat. But first one that can kick us off is talking about having an internal AI instance. Actually, let's start with something a little bit easier. What would be the funniest mistake you've seen an AI make? Hella, we can start with you.
Sure. This isn't time specific, but I always kind of bring it up when explaining to people how AI can be really fallible and quite funny at the same time. There's a fairly famous research paper called something like Synthesizing Robust Adversarial Examples, which is basically about generating adversarial images for neural networks to make them misclassify data. And the authors generated adversarial pictures of cats, which the neural network would then classify as guacamole. And this results in this funny snippet in this research paper, which is a picture of a cat with some equations and a resulting prediction of 100% confident that this is guacamole, and it always makes me laugh.
That's funny. Cats and guacamole. Can't go wrong with that. Kieran, what about you?
That's way better than mine, infinitely. For me, it's just silly prompt interpretation. So, for example, I might give it a value and go, hey, can you split this into two values? And then me going, okay, that's done. On to the next bit. I will look at the output and I'll get a value with a value of value 1 and a second value of value 2. And it's literally just taken my prompt and said, this is value 1, this is value 2. And I remember at one point I was trying to rewrite a prompt to get it to stop doing that, and I just ended up with various iterations of random numbers that it just started producing. And eventually when I said, can you output all my data into a single array? And all I got was an array of value 1, value 2, and then that about 20 times. So not the most comical, not as good as guacamole, but it's just still fun to see that the little joys in a otherwise quite dull task.
Yeah. And actually, going off of the prompts, do you guys have any just quick tips for writing effective prompts?
I've got a really good one that I learned embarrassingly recently, which is, so your first prompt is to ask the AI to write a good prompt for what you're trying to achieve. So you go, like, write me a prompt for generating a sim query that does this, this, and this based on this kind of data. And then you get the prompt from the AI, and then you can paste the prompt into it. And I find that the AI generated prompt itself, as long as it actually makes sense, is usually more effective than my attempts at writing prompts at getting the job done. What about you, Kieran?
Yeah, so for me, I like to talk in hypotheticals. So if I want some information, I'm kind of worried there's like an ethical thing that will stop it giving me all the information. So I've learned that if I just said, for example, there is a male who is 5'8" and weighs around 75 kilos who wanted to get stronger in the gym, using the knowledge accessible to you, how would you optimize their strength training? And then I would essentially get AI to write me a full plan. Just because I've given it like a hypothetical. I've not said, give me a plan. I've said, here's a bit of data. How would you do it? Not do it for me. And I don't know, it's just something subconsciously that just makes it write a better prompt. I mean, like, or if you're worried about something, for example, really recently, I've used some prompts to say, okay, there's a scenario where this person from this background is really worried about this one particular thing. What might be the reasons why that's the case? And it'll actually give you like a little bit of advice and guidance to go, oh, hey, this is these are some things you could think about and try. Obviously, in the case, it might be something for myself or something for a friend, and it just helps you sort of get that information with a bit more of a scientific, like hypothesis-driven background rather than just straight up asking something, because I think the way it reacts is slightly different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, being as clear and descriptive as possible, I think just further helps you get towards that answer you wanna achieve. So we got the fun, easy questions out of the way. I want to go back to that first question I had started reading. And Hella, I think you were talking about how you have an internal AI instance, but someone wanted to know how you prevent shadow AI in your company. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so maybe I'll define the term first. So I'm interpreting shadow AI the same way as you would interpret kind of shadow IT, i.e. AI that's being used within your company that you're not aware of and you can't really control. Just like shadow IT would be some servers that somebody set up in 2013 and then everybody forgot about them, but they're still there and they haven't been patched for a decade. And you should probably know about them because they contain, your HR data or whatever. Shadow AI would be some AI chatbot that's being used that your employees are pasting confidential company data into, but you don't control it. You don't have any logs from it. You don't know what's being shared. You don't know what, how the AI is using your data, etc. So I think I'm not going to comment on how Samsara does it specifically because I wouldn't want to kind of disclose that kind of information, but I can talk about a few ideas from kind of generic things that I've seen around in an industry and what I've heard other companies are doing, as well as a mix of stuff that we might do. But basically, number one thing is to make sure that there is an actual policy around the use of AI. So to make sure that your employees are aware that the policy exists and to be sure that you understand what the policy actually says. if it were up to me to write a policy for a company, I would probably say that you can only use approved AI tools because that means that you have control and governance over the data that goes into them, and potentially some logging, and you understand what tools, and then other tools outside of what's actually approved aren't allowed to be used. So if you go to, not picking on anything, but say Google Gemini, and that's not an approved tool, then that's against a policy, which means that if you find that people are doing that, you have a basis to tell them off. And then, depending on what kind of controls you have internally, things like application allow listing or application deny listing can be good for making sure that these things can't run on endpoint. And then also kind of network-based blocks. So if you have a proxy or something like that, making sure that things that are categorized as AI, and I think most proxy solutions nowadays do have that kind of category, is just, either blocked by default, or you're met with some kind of page that says, proceed with caution, this might not be allowed, or something like that. And then on top of that, if you've got EDR logs or something like that, doing some scheduled searching of whether people are using AI tools, or if you've got network logs or browser logs or something like that, doing some kind of regular scheduled researching and detections on whether these things are being used would allow you to view what's actually being used by the employees at your company.
Got it. Thank you. Another question for both of you guys. Due to AI, in thinking about the threat landscape, have you guys seen any stronger phishing techniques come through that you've come across?
Happy to start on this one in case we've both got an opinion on it. No, to be honest. Teams introduced that on itself, so thank you for introducing 2 avenues, Microsoft. Within Times, we've set up stuff like optical character recognition scanning, text scanning, HTML reading, attachment sandboxing. It's all the sort of standard fare. The real benefit in this case is AI allows us to respond in a stronger way, because we can then use it to give us a bit more context and just present it to our analysts in a much easier way. But in terms of stronger phishing techniques, I wouldn't say I personally have seen any.
Yeah, I think I think it makes sense that so maybe we used to get training on the fact that phishing would have a lot of grammatical errors, and it would just kind of look a bit weird based on things starting with hello friend or something, something that just doesn't really seem right. And I guess with AI tools now, threat actors whose first language isn't the one that is being used to write the email, etc., may be able to craft phishing which looks more convincing. That being said, this is just my theory rather than something that I've seen before. Personally, since I've been working in cybersecurity, effective phishing campaigns have always been kind of already pretty good in terms of grammar, etc. So maybe it's just a question of, starting to work in cybersecurity within the last 5 years, and not 10, 15 years ago, which means that I haven't really been exposed to the bad grammatical errors in phishing, etc. In terms of techniques, etc., I think in general, kind of malware development and security is becoming slightly more accessible to everyone, but I think it's very hard to determine if that's, directly because of AI or just, more people interested in cybersecurity in general.
Yeah. I did want to know, someone was curious how you guys still maintain that human in the loop element while getting the most out of AI. So personally, I think having some sort of human intervention is really important. But from your guys' perspective, how do you still keep the team involved with what the AI is doing?
I can go first there. So, I mean, it's basically up to whoever's developing whatever it is you're doing, but making sure that there is some kind of action or button or something that a human can use to confirm whether something is the right action is kind of the approach that I'm using. So, for instance, if we have something that's been identified as spam, while the AI is there to detect it as spam or not, we still have an expectation that a human will review whether this is in fact correctly categorized or not. And if the AI was mistaken, then we're able to still catch things and not miss things.
And Karen?
To be honest, really simple implementation for us is for like the AI tech stuff. Kind of alluded to it earlier. We will essentially stream the AI output to a Times page, which is like a web form for those who may not have used Times. And on the form, essentially, the analyst then has the ability to edit any of the output. The reason for this is it keeps them in the loop, and it stops us reporting absolutely crazy observations that have been fabricated out of absolutely nowhere on a security incident. For example, I don't want it saying a device has been 100% compromised, which is why we're raising it to the client. It might just be the case that some malware was confirmed, which might have been related to a compromise, and it's not all really joined together that way. So yeah, the whole point here is just to give them an opportunity and not completely eliminate them from the process. I think that's the only real example I've got for that one.
Yeah, no, I think that's still a great one. And I do want to note that for anyone who's curious of any like specific examples for Tines and how you can get your teams started in incorporating AI into your own workflows. I do want to call out our library. You can find it on our website. We have a dedicated section for AI and Tines. It's broken out by feature, and even more specifically, for anyone that started using Workbench, we have a section for Workbench as well. But looking at the timing here, I think we're going to wrap this one up. So thank you, everyone who popped a question in the chat. Thank you, everyone, for coming on to listen today, and to Kieran and Hella, for joining us today. Just some brief housekeeping before we close. We'll be sure to send everyone who attended a link to the webinar within 24 hours. So just keep an eye on your inbox to catch up on any part of the conversation you may have missed. But that is all from us. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much for hosting.
Thanks.